Maybe can send a PDF to
That is exactly,
I
yeah.
read the Word document.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know my husband sends stuff all the time and I keep telling him, you know, turn it into a PDF because then it says, you know,
Right.
it'll come off.
Does that make page pagination issues in the Word doc?
Oh, I didn't get any pages
my,
at all.
When I opened it up originally on my iPad, it was all the first, whatever pages had pictures over top, it was all mingled
That's
up.
what we had.
Yeah.
And I had to open it up on a desktop and for it to actually properly displace everything. So
Yeah, we should have sent a PDF to.
Wasn't
I
the,
think there was a PDF.
wasn't
There was
the,
one
wasn't the,
That was the second part.
the appendix or whatever was in a PDF form, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it was just said I thought it might be easier for you to add comments if it were in a Word doc, you know, if you wanted to make your own notes in there.
I didn't
Should
feel
have done
like
both.
I could write on it. I didn't want to. Like, I won't touch it. I saw a typo, I'm like, but I won't touch it.
All those typos just appeared, they weren't there.
Yeah, they printed out on mine, but they shouldn't have.
Yes.
No, there were some typos, I read it.
You go blind after a while because you reread things.
Okay.
Yeah, I did the same.
See, I figured somebody would find it. It wasn't gonna be me.
I did the same thing.
so there was typos, I wasn't seeing
Just a
things.
little
Right.
concerned Matt is not on, and I don't know what the issue is.
Are you texting with him?
He sent an email.
Oh, okay.
My problem is I can't send any emails out, and I don't know why. I mean, I've got unlimited data. So is the Wi-Fi in here off or?
Oh,
Well, the Wi-Fi is different.
I might,
I could open my hotspot up for you if you want.
No, that's all right. Just not working.
All right, here's the Zoom invite. I'll just forward this.
He found it.
He did say he found it.
Yeah.
oh, here, I got it right here, yeah.
SCASW.
Right, that's all I have.
No internet.
That's what I have too.
Question mark.
Are you on Wi-Fi yet?
Oh, yeah.
I have the Wi-Fi.
What was Beantown? What was that? The Wi-Fi.
Beantown is Wi-Fi, that's the Wi-Fi.
Okay. BE@NT. Okay.
All right, good. We're good.
Okay, call the meeting to order. First item, minutes of
18. I wanted to make a note of your minutes that I was not here,
That's what
but I was, so either I was existentially here. I actually wasn't here, so.
Any other comments on the minutes? Hi, Matt.
Good evening, everybody. I have a slight cold, so I figured I'd spare you and just show up remote.
Okay, if there are no other comments, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Marilyn, second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next is the review of the comprehensive master plan. John,
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Well,
Get a paper towel.
So,
You're not making a mess.
hello, Zoom people.
Can you hear John?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Just make sure you speak up, please.
And Amy's also on the Zoom side of the world too. Hello, Amy.
Can I make one comment before we start?
Matt?
Amy, I think you led this effort for this draft. It is very well written in general. So kudos to you and the team who helped put this together.
Thank you. Nice.
No, we're gonna adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Matt. We're all going home.
Is that it? The only thing, I think I need screen sharing ability. Someone can,
Oh, you're trying to increase the volume,
Yeah.
because, yeah, it is very low.
So, can somebody?
That's all.
I think you already increased the
What's it take to get permission for Amy to share her screen?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, right there.
Yeah.
If you go, if you go to her picture on her screen up there.
Yep.
There might be, yeah.
3 dots to the
up
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there. And then make co-host. Thank you.
I'm looking.
No,
No, somebody say something on Zoom.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
There you go.
Right.
We couldn't hear you.
Excellent.
Meanwhile, I was unmuted that entire time. Sorry, everyone.
Hey,
You're
you
following
didn't
along
know
with
if
the
you could-
cartoons in the back. Great.
Zoom has a great audio feature where it just mutes all that background noise. It's pretty good. We don't hear those cartoons.
Mm,
Oh.
okay, good.
Ready for the presentation?
Yes.
Let's do it.
John B.
Okay.
Is that
So-
big enough? Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Looks good. So, Amy, I'll just give you an old fashioned click, okay? When we're ready to move forward, or you can just read my mind. If I'm going too slowly, click it. So we put this presentation together, one, to help kind of organize our thoughts, and we thought maybe if you like it, we can then, put some script to it, and so, you can put it on your website, and people can walk through the presentation too. All right, well, this is a great night. Thanks for coming out, everybody. We're so glad to be at this point, and we're looking to your, any feedback that you have. So, our agenda is, pretty simple. We're gonna, click, acknowledge, all of your work. We're gonna, kind of provide, this is also for the public, right? Overview the process to date, review. We're gonna provide a high-level overview of the draft plan, the contents of it. We'll talk a little bit about next steps and discussion and feedback. Those are kind of all one big, motion. And so, first of all, you all, right? If there was a whole bunch of other village people here, I'm sure they would be cheering, clapping, and you deserve a self-round of applause.
I just make a mention about this.
Yes.
I don't think you need to have the name member after us, because we're all members, just chair. And the trust, and we should probably all be in alphabetical order. And likewise, the trustees, either in alphabetical order or in order of longevity,
Oh, okay. All right.
just for.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. And now you all are put a lot into this. It's been so far so good. We hope it continues. And on our team, I'm sorry, you missed something. Oh, real quick. I think so the team, BM Plan Design, John B, that's me, Amy Fitzgerald, our senior planner. There's been other folks involved as well. We're in the background. I know you met Dana Brady at this Zoom meeting, and Cynthia being prodding us along with, sometimes verbally, sometimes physically.
Hopefully just you.
Pretty much me.
That's what sponsors are supposed to do.
Right, that's right. So, and Michael Allen with Regrowth Planning, and has been a big help. And Rick Letter Barnes, Upstate GIS, has also contributed. And so from here, what is a comprehensive plan? Well, Fortunately, New York law is very flexible and kind of open to what goes into a comprehensive plan. And so it allows communities like Ballston Spa to kind of put together your own table of contents, if you would, how you want, what you want to be in your comprehensive plan. You certainly have done that here. And I would say, I would be challenged to go onto Google and do a word search of 10 or 20 words in this plan. You probably won't find that pop up again, which just means this was your plan, written, by you, for you, with you. And I think that's something that I know in our company, we're proud of to be part of this. I hope you are too. So it's a long-term vision. It provides direction in terms of perspective, goals for the community. It incorporates your values and your input. It really does reflect on kind of the story of Ballston Spa and the story yet to be told. And that way it sets up a roadmap for the future. It establishes general policy, goals, and actions. But it's not a law per se. It's a policy document, right? And it's strategic in that it's intended to focus on a lot of important things that the village needs to work on. In that sense, it may be a little daunting because there's a lot to do in all of our communities. So we'll be talking more about that. And that the future actions of the village must comply with the goals and policies of the plan, and that shouldn't be a problem. The big thing is establishing projects for the community forward. So the process in making a plan, click is so you all know in the spring, fall, and summer, there were meetings. We had the inventory analysis phase. There was a lot of background studies that we were all able to benefit from, including the bike and pedestrian plan, the economic study, the background study that Capital District Regional Planning Commission put together. So there's a lot of good information that was a foundation for this plan. You all met twice a month, right? And you all each took turns leading meetings and putting together topics and discussion points and recording those and talking about those, and it really helped shape the plan. That was all woven into the plan. In the summer, right, we did a public outreach, a community survey, which was really successful in terms of how many people responded to that survey. Here we are in late fall, let's call it, a draft plan presentation. And the winter will be even later fall, we'll presenting the plan with you all into the village board and hopefully having it adopted. And SEEKR is the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which it's part of the review process. Okay. So this is just a little graphic showing how robust a network of public outreach activities that you all in the committee and did. And we did help with many of these. And the posters that were put up around town, the survey, the website for the village was kind of a hub for people to get information. We had a visioning workshop, right? It was really, and I appreciate you all getting folks to be there. It was late in August, not the easiest time to get people together, but you all did it. Press releases, great job of those, social media, committee meetings, emails, and a lot of, conversations. And so the public outreach is really helpful because now we have a lot of community input. So there's the survey was put out with the water bills at the village. It was online. It was posted on the website, social media. 808 responses from July to September. It's really, really great. Okay, and there's a little snapshot of the QR code in the survey itself. And just some quick highlights of the survey. On the next slide, we have 74% of respondents were village residents, 13% reside nearby, 75% own a home in the village, 72% live outside the village. 80% agree that there's a need for improvement in the walkability of the entire village. I would also add it is a very walkable village too. I think that's why people appreciate that. And 78% said it was important for the village to take steps, actively promote and encourage use of alternative energy sources for its municipal and community use. Okay, And we also learned, these are some of the questions, I'm not gonna go through the whole thing here. This was a question about the housing type that people thought would be, should be encouraged looking ahead. And the first two were single-family homes, two-family homes, the townhomes. So the kind of the lower density housing was really on the top end of that, of that part of the survey. And the second slide to the right was really shows a balance. It's really asking about a scale of 1 to 5, how important, is it for the village to focus on a particular type of infrastructure. And that you can see that's very even across the board. Drinking water was a little bit higher, this yellow one. Sewers, roads, sidewalks, and storm drains are all kind of, it's very close. So I say the community here is looking for a balanced investment plan in infrastructure. The visioning workshop, we had 52 participants in person, broken into groups. We also have a good sized crowd, probably about half that many on Zoom, maybe a little bit more, maybe like the 30s, I think. And so these are the 3 questions that I would say the committee came up with. I think, John Cromie, these were questions that we worked with you on framing, and I think these are great questions. What attributes do you think make the village an attractive place to visit, live, invest money, or start a new business? The second question was, how would we like to enhance each of those attributes? And the third question was, what 3 words might you use to describe your ideal future vision for Ballston Spa? Lively conversation about these, about the vision. And so I'm just going to read you the vision statement that's in the plan itself. Ballston Spa will continue to enhance and preserve the charm, historic character, and natural resources of the community for future generations, while encouraging opportunities for the economic growth of small businesses and improving the quality of life for residents. Self-described as a village of friends, Ballston Spa residents recognize its unique sense of community, safety, and quaint and cozy character. A more interconnected village can be achieved by linking nearby regional trails to neighborhoods and downtown destinations, supporting a community greenway historic corridor along the Caterosseras and Gordon Creeks, and enhance sidewalk and streetscape infrastructure to serve both local economic development and community interaction. The village's proximity to larger cities such as Saratoga Springs and nearby I-87 and the greater Capital District help continue to make Ballston Spa an accessible and desirable place to live, work, and visit. By improving its infrastructure, enhancing its diverse and affordable housing stock, preserving its many historic community assets, Ballston Spa sets itself apart as a unique and valuable destination. We've really got a gem. That's the whole vision. So this community profile is interesting in that it really boils down a long and rich story of history. And John Cromie deserves credit for this. The last time I'm going to give you credit for anything. Okay, it's over for me. And so the reason to be, for the village. Why did this end up like this place here, this village? And really, it was based on the geology and the cultural history of the mineral springs, right? Coming here, and you put the spa, Ballston Spa, you put it. Then from the 1830s to the 1900s was really the Industrial Revolution came home, and factories were put up and putting the mill into the mill town. In fact, that's why here part of the town is the town of Milton is literally comes from the word mill town. And there were mills up and down the Caterosseras, all the way up through, and there still are there's a couple left, right? Then it became a center of a farming community, right? And that period was 1890s up to the 1950s. Agriculture is still here, but it's there's a lot more different economic activity than that. Transitioning, post World War II, we've seen the village become more of a bedroom community, right, in the post-World War era. General Electric down in Schenectady and all the other employment, Albany, other employment hubs in the region. And that takes us to from really the 1980s to the current, where the village, I think, has gone through some sparks of revitalization. There's been investments, entrepreneurs coming into the village. And really, I think we called it re-recognition of the charm of village life in a vibrant regional economy. So it's a great way to think about the village. So within the plan, there's a profile of the community. It includes the thoughts of the observations of the steering committee relative to these topics: government built infrastructure, information technology, climate change, built environment, housing, utility infrastructure, stormwater management, economic considerations, social considerations. Some of the priority issues that were raised were, at least really from the beginning of the planning process itself, is definition of the existing community character, historic preservation, exploring historic standards, the importance of downtown, and how to advance the vibrant, walkable downtown area, and also looking at smart growth, recognizing growth and change are part of everyday life, but how to establish and expand opportunities for economic smart growth that makes sense for Ballston Spa. So one of the important areas of this plan is to look at land use and future land use direction. So we spent some time, and you all spent some time giving us ideas for what the land use vision would be. So this is a land use vision map that shows some different character areas, and I'll walk you through most of these areas. On the map, there's the downtown central business district in the red, downtown transition in the orange. There's the largest area is the single family residential shown in the yellow color.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, sure can.
In that single family, I think you have at least 3 different types of single family in there.
Okay.
That may wish to be differentiated. The suburban areas, such as Kelly Square, Point Hills, Forest Park, maybe even just those 3. Then you have the area that has larger building lots. Okay, on the western, I'm sorry, on the eastern and southern part of the village. Then you have a lot of factory houses, the smaller building lots, the north end and the northern Saratoga Avenue. And those 3 different characteristics, I think, are very, very defining, and maybe we should define that in the map.
Yeah, right. It's not all one
Yeah.
homogeneous character type, right? And as John mentioned, a lot of that character has to do with when these properties were developed, what was going on in the economy, what was going on with architectural styles, construction technology, etc. One of the things you see in these old downtowns is they're narrow and long, deep lots because building roads was a tremendous expense, and putting in sewers and water and stuff. So building frontage was a tremendously precious resource. But then as our technology improved to build bigger roads and put in pipes that are made of plastic, we can, make lots bigger differently.
Yeah, that
So
was one of my comments on that map too, was some of the neighborhoods are referred to throughout the plan.
Yeah.
Kelly Square and Colonial Hills, and there's not really a map that shows kind of where these are for people that might not be familiar.
Right. Okay. No, good point.
The same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So that green space in the lower left corner
Yes.
is the cemetery?
This is some,
It is. Yes.
Is it fair to characterize that as open space parkland?
It's
I would say so.
we call it park open space. Maybe the label is a little generous. I know some towns on Long Island, that's all there is. We did debate it, and it's a fair question.
Yeah, I believe that's misleading,
Yeah.
because at any point in time, the owner of that property, cemetery association, or whoever owns that, could decide that, you know, they don't want people recreating there.
Sure, just.
And I just think the sentiment
It's actually
is,
the opposite. They want people now.
well, that might be okay, but they may not want kids on skateboards in there.
That's fair. I think
If they-
we could create another category for that. That
Yeah.
is, something else.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a bad joke. I'm not gonna.
And I did have one other
Okay.
question, and that is, this
Yep.
map,
Yes.
from what I can tell at this scale,
Mm-hmm.
does not reflect the adult district. Is that true? As a separate designated area according to the future land use. So where does that fit in?
Downtown.
Is that relegated to the central business district now?
I would say,
Or is it still
well, I'd say
a?
I don't know, that's a subtlety of the zoning, I think. I don't know that we would.
It's
I've never highlighted that before in any other town, but,
Yeah. Okay, I just thought
Except
I'd bring
Las
that
Vegas,
up.
we
I
did
think
it.
that's gonna be an issue for us. I know that when it was originally designated, it was a very sensitive issue in the community.
Right.
And they were very strategic about ensuring
right,
that they complied with the state law.
right.
However, they didn't want it in front of everybody's face. So I'll just flag that as something I've seen over the last, 30 plus years,
Mhm.
that now has changed. I'm not saying you're changing, I'm just saying
Right.
with progress.
Mhm.
And that could have some implications for the community
Okay,
in the
then,
future.
I would think for purposes of this map, it's sort of like a little overlay. So it's CBD. And you don't have to have only adult businesses in that particular area. You can have anything. You can
Yeah,
have
that's-
a boutique.
Right, that's kind of how it's handled now, is that, I think anyway, any CBD use can be extended into that district. I think.
So there's a district called Downtown Transition. We'll get to this a little bit more, but that's the orange show, then as the orange area. Multifamily residential is yellow. Highway commercial is toward the northern end, brown. There's something called compact residential, which really is kind of a layer that we put on the Maplewood site. The residential transition is a small area at the end of Church Street near East and West High Streets. I've got some more information on that. Then the parks and open space and, other, the other category is.
Green space.
Green space. Industrial and then gateway design. So the next slide just is a little detail of the northern part of the village. It got kind of. The next slide, I think is.
Yes, we always are.
Just couldn't fit it all.
This is our lot in life. We're just an appendage.
Couldn't fit it. I get it.
There we go. So and one of the things in the map, and we'll go to the next slide, Amy, is the trail, the idea of a trail and greenway network through the village. And so and I know this was important to pick out the sidewalk improvements as well, but here we're the images here are just trails, but there are different types of trails. There's the Zip Smith Trail on the bottom, there's a nature trail, which a more formal kind of, landscape architecture trail on the top left showing, some other features. And all of these I could see you all having in the village in different places, depending on the site that you want to have. But I was just in Arlington, Virginia over the weekend. finger approach, right? And so popular, you know, it's one of those things, if you build it, they will come and will use it, right? Just, and it's not much space. It's, you know, perfect for the village to, you know, to have that. And so that's one piece of land use vision, right? And then the downtown central business district, there's the next slide, and really, that's really celebrating, you know, the kind of the historic downtown, the various kind of mix of architecture and building. This is kind of a denser area, and there will be opportunities for some change, probably not these kind of building blocks, but other parts of the downtown. And it's a really unique and beautiful aspect of the village. It's really a treasure, really, this district. And just in my time here in town, it's really come a long way. I do remember, you know, CJ Outfitters.
Yes.
In fact, I do remember, even my mom worked with Lynn Allison, who was a massage therapist in town. My mom was a licensed massage therapist. She would share space with Lynn on Front Street. And we'd come down and shop at CJ Outfitters.
Right.
You know,
It was a big thing during.
it was a big thing, right? Yeah. And so this is an opportunity for continue to foster that the strength of downtown. I know COVID was hard for downtown businesses in particular, and restaurants. And so there's a lot of recommendations in the plan, right? And it would be great to get some big grant funding for downtown, you know, to help support the investment to kind of keep it going. Some serious capital money. I know the village has applied for the downtown revitalization initiative grants. Keep on applying. So that's one district. And so related to that is the next slide is the kind of central business district transition. And the idea here is, you know, to continue the kind of neat and unique, you know, kind of shops and little places and nooks. You know, these are images from other places, you know, just showing that kind of same character. You know, I think one was the guitars from Woodstock, New York. A couple of them, you know, perfect, right, for Woodstock. And then, you know, adaptive reuse of an old industrial building and some, you know, these kind of opportunities are great because you've got all these resources that can be used and reused. In some cases, there'll be new construction.
It's almost happening organically on Washington Street. currently.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and just, yes.
That's what that middle picture reminded me of
Right.
immediately.
Right.
And so, you know, this is something I think we've all kind of talked about, and, you know, at least land use wise could be put into the code, you know, to kind of shape this up. And then the next slide is that, you know, there's not a huge amount of highway commercial in the village. I grabbed these images just to show, not necessarily that these architecture or anything, but this is the idea of a little more attention to the streetscape. And actually, interesting, these are two projects I worked on a while ago in another highway corridor. Just the first one is a chain type of food place, but the idea there is trying to make some architectural character, and those are, you know, brick columns and some, you know, some fencing and some landscaping, so that the streetscape has a little bit of something definition to it. And the one below is, yes, yep, Matt.
Aldi's on the north side of town is going through a renovation. Was Ballston Spa zoning involved in that at all, or are they just going to standardize to their commercial aesthetic? Does anybody know?
Really good. That's a really good question.
I should standardizing on a modern, updated commercial.
Aldi on the north.
I don't think they went to the planning board because I didn't go to most of the meetings.
They did not.
Did you hear that, Matt?
I heard that. So I guess my question, my real question is, because I assume that was the answer. What mechanisms or protections will be outlined in either zoning or this comprehensive plan to capture scenarios like that?
Well, Aldi didn't change their footprint though,
Right,
correct?
that's what I was gonna say.
They didn't change their footprint, they just they just reorganized the layout, interior layout of the store to align with the model that's up in Wilton. That's my
Well,
understanding.
they're doing a new.
They're also doing facade work and roofing and exterior improvements as well. I'm just wondering if that is, just throwing it out there, a possible opportunity to adhere to any future zoning. If they're dumping money into refreshing the building, why not adhere to future code? Just throwing that out there as a scenario.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, a threshold for level of alteration where you're beyond the threshold, you know, bring the facade up to sort of the current standard or guidelines.
The town of Colony is really good at negotiating those out of, with this properties change and people invest.
My understanding is that McDonald's on the south side of town did some back and forth with design, and it was changed as they did their refresh. Now, we didn't have the new standards in place or new zoning in place to discuss aesthetics, but I'm sure that the McDonald's would have gone through and made additional changes or all other changes if.
Yeah, they're just outside the village.
They're
It's in the town of Ballston though.
So they're town, but
I
yeah,
just disregard that.
Yeah. No, but it's a good point.
no, it's a similar concept, right?
It raises the question of working with the neighboring towns to ensure that those gateways are.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I do think what makes it easier is this community here, we had design guidelines for this corridor. We actually wanted this corridor of this was kind of a down and tired commercial strip with a lot of potential. So we use the design guidelines as an incentive for property owners to allow them to invest, because the community made it a lot easier to do projects because we loosened up parking requirements and other things, made it easier to do a new project. You know, gave it a lot of flexibility. Yet there were some stronger design guidelines that would be expected. The building down the way is actually Wegmans. It's got a 2-story restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
It's out in Pittsford actually, and they did a great. They were behind that. There's the Old Erie Canal. They made a path up to the canal that you go to, and access the canal path. It's still suburban strip, but it's really quite a nice investment, and it's unique too. They have some canal era architecture in the back. All sides of the building look good.
What's the second store?
The second store, that's the restaurant.
That's the restaurant.
Yeah, it's up, up and down, and then the store next to it. It's part of it. Yeah. And the upper step looks over the old locks in the Old Erie Canal. So it's yeah. So that's what's great about your work. I mean, you're having these conversations to help set the stage for the guidelines and code in place. You don't have a big highway, it's commercial district.
A lot of space in front of Ocean State.
Right, yeah.
You could imagine some buildings like that in rural Ocean State and change the character.
Yeah, that Wegmans was a rebuild of the Wegmans. That was, they crunched the Wegmans, built that new Wegmans. And I would say it's very successful. It's a very successful story.
We said it's in Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And so we also took a look, we had some conversations, right, in the visioning about the kind of uses that would be support, kind of the new neighborhood development, yet smaller lot sizes, a little bit more. So we call this category compact residential, and thinking that the Maplewood Manor site, it's zoned R1 right now. It's surrounded it's got some county property, but mostly some residential around it. But to make it work, the challenge, I think, is the economics of a project needs to have enough density to justify, the kind of investment that's needed, and to justify, creating an equivalent tax base for the village that's there now. And so, but this is a rendering of that we did for another client, but it really is perfect for Ballston Spa because I think it evokes kind of a traditional neighborhood. Those are, that's kind of higher density. We originally intended those to be duplexes, but community didn't want duplexes, they wanted detached housing, so these are, we call these cottage homes, carriage homes. And so the thought would be, the next step in looking at that property is that and maybe a few others would be a good spot for some special detail to look at. What is the right, you know, getting ahead of that, what is the right density character for that property that would work, it makes sense. I think if it's, if you hit the nail on the head with that, it'll be very successful. Matt,
Are you familiar with, looking at compact residential? Are you familiar with on the north side of Saratoga, just south of North Broadway and just south of the college? I can't think right now, the campus, the college. Skidmore, sorry, south of Skidmore. There's a little enclave or a little nook of compact residential properties. It's almost like a meandering street, and they cram these suckers in there. I don't know if that's what you're referring. Are you referring to something like that, but just different type of housing?
Yeah, something like that. That's, yep. I think the density is there, I mean, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But that maybe not the same architecture.
Yeah, not the same caliber of house. Yeah.
Well, those are, you know, those are costly houses with all the stone facades, you mean, in that, right?
Yeah, but I just noticed that when you make a turn into this meandering street, it is a completely different just perspective. It's like the density is completely changed, and it's like it just looks and feels completely different.
Right, yeah. So our thought was that you could make a really beautiful development in there, have some internal open space, maybe a town green common, village common kind of thing, and set something up in advance that what you think is successful, and they can even test it with, you know, values so that, you know, that it makes sense from all measures, you know.
Are you thinking of places like Maplewood?
Yes, exactly. Yep, places like Maplewood. In fact, Maplewood, that site. Yeah. And I also think there's, because of the survey that the community was looking for, you know, single, family, this kind of housing. But the trick is to get enough of it in there to get your.
Does anybody know the size of that lot or that property?
It's almost 17 acres,
Oh,
16 and a half
okay,
acres.
it's not a lot of.
Not a lot, but there's no wetlands on it or not much of any constraints to it. You know, it's very buildable, it seems. So,
Nice and flat.
yeah.
Yeah, I suppose,
Yeah, there's a couple entrances.
There's a couple entrances, right? You have a very traditional neighborhood, a little bit different, you know.
right?
Which would blend in with the history of the village, right? All the different eras of development.
Exactly.
And, you know, maybe somewhere you could have a little bit bigger buildings, bigger structures to get the count up.
Yeah, so I was gonna say maybe one anchor, I don't know, 10 unit thing.
Right, no, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Okay. And then there's a small, you know, potential for a residential transition area. Interestingly, at the south end of the village, it still is very residential. As soon as you get to the village line almost, right? The character is very residential. There are some of the buildings there do have office use. And this could be a way, again, we keep it contained, but a way to offer owners, if it makes sense to have some type of a transition use that was not high intensity, not like a bar or restaurant that would need massive amounts of parking, pay a lot of noise, but some of these other kind of uses that would still fit in with the village, be low impact, and you know, allow owners of some of these bigger, older houses other options.
Yeah, there's a lot of multifamily that exists there already.
Right.
So
Yeah, and that may or may not, that's great, that's fine.
right, it works, but it's not zoned that way currently.
Yeah, right. So to accommodate that.
Is this a similar situation? I think we were talking about the lower part of Malta Avenue as a transition kind of thing as well.
Could be.
Yeah, yeah. That part could be even a little more intensive, I think, than this.
Yeah.
I was thinking anyway, this little character's different, property's different, that. Again, that has, I'd say the land there, the sites there might be more, possibly more intensive than this.
Right, because you really are
Well,
right downtown.
You're right downtown, right here, you're right near the, it's right.
The parking lot, yeah, the big parking.
This is why I think the zoning for Ballston Spa should be written for Ballston Spa from scratch, the new, it's too easy to take a code from some other town and plop it in, my friends who write the transect zoning and all that, it's wonderful, they have these wonderful cookbooks on how to do this stuff, but I think the problem is, once you can't jam that down in a place like Ballston Spa as it is, because it's like this cookie cutter thing.
Yeah.
It might be perfect in, like out in Virginia somewhere where there's all this new development, you can do that. But here, it's very subtle and very careful.
Yeah. It's a scalpel, not a.
Yeah, it's right. It's not a hammer. Right. And so, looking out to the, community goals, implementation framework, and putting this together, this presentation, there's so much detail in that part of the plan. We thought, how are we going to cover that tonight? So we thought, look, if folks can read that, can get into it, after, it takes a deeper dive. But the overall is that the category, we got the categories of the built environment and land use, open space and recreation, housing, social considerations, information technology, climate change, economic considerations, transportation, infrastructure, village properties, and staffing. And so you all work through this with short, medium, and long-term goals, long-term actions, right? The implementation steps were listed underneath each one. Potential funding sources were identified. And so those and that list is really a great way to move forward. I think we heard from everybody. Everyone said, let's get this plan accomplished, not just not get it written, but have it lead to action. So I think, that's really important, putting it into action, getting projects completed will be really the measure of that success, right? And so that'll, but I think your job was really well done, got a unique plan, and you did a lot of outreach. Our thing is the plan balances the needs of residents and businesses, fosters your vision, right? And really it serves to serve you well. And it's going to guide to the future of the village for current and for future generations. There's a lot in there. And thank you. That's it for the presentation.
I like the way that you, at the end, put together the short-term, long-term, ongoing, with the potential funding sources. Because that, I think, sets the village up for a lot of grant writing. And justification for those grants. That one too, they help. Very nice.
Or at least it gives them some hope that it's more than just, the residents and the businesses paying taxes to finance that there's a greater pool of money out there. And historically, we haven't taken advantage of that. So it's hope.
Yeah, one comment I had on that is, for me, sort of the two big swings, which I love the ideas, are the trails along the creeks and the sort of these gateway entrances. And I could see somebody reading this and say, oh, that'll never happen. And it just gets thrown on the shelf. So one of my comments was, are there communities that have accomplished that we could put in a sidebar and say, these guys did it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Here's an example. They made it happen. This is, briefly how. just to kind of give some
Okay.
hope.
Yeah, we do that, right, that's a good idea.
And a photographic sidebar of an
Right.
example, because I'm not sure, although it's very endearing to have that postcard as a look back for the gateway. I think we need to be looking forward as to what communities
Sure.
are doing.
Mhm.
And so, yes, a photographic example, I think would be great.
Okay.
Even better if it could be a community in New York, it doesn't matter where it is, but just, something to
The
let people
economic
to
behind that,
understand.
Historic photograph, the gateway no longer exists.
Right.
Municipalities can't do that.
Mhm.
But there are, like you were saying, other examples, I'm sure you will have pictures of.
And not only that, because when you're talking about gateways, we are talking about our neighbors, the towns,
Right.
Ballston and Milton, not necessarily Malta as much, but, so anything that you want to do at that end has to be coordinated with, so you have to come to them and say, here it is, this is what it's gonna look like, this is our plan, stuff like that, instead of saying, oh, we just want to, and I think, maybe I'm being a cockeyed optimist, but I would think that they would, jump at the chance to enhance, that part of their towns as well,
Milton just finished the Route 50 study.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, and they're actually, I think, presumably changing some of their zoning at the next meeting to it. And you can go on their website, and it is changing that piece from North Line down to our line to be a more pedestrian,
Really?
green, all of that.
That's
So I
good,
think
yeah.
that would be worth looking at, because didn't just come up to the village line.
That's right,
It's not,
right,
right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, what they're doing is really more in line with.
Good.
Will look better to the village.
I do like, Scott, what you said, though, the photographic evidence is one thing, but the kind of guidance we could get from them on what you did in order to make this reality.
Yeah, that for me there were the two big kind of stretch goals,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And I think just doing some, it kind of ties into, I read it not as the optimist, but more of the cynical guy. And you said, one of the things you pointed out is that there's a lot of stuff in here that was mentioned in the 1996 comp plan
Mhm.
that's collecting dust somewhere.
Right.
So how do we make this not sit on the shelf and collect
I've been
dust?
thinking about that, and I think it is, if I can find a section here, that talks about governmental organization. Which one is this?
Yeah, I know where you're.
Well, John is looking, I would say, I
Yeah,
don't
go
consider
ahead,
the
go ahead.
96 plan to be a disaster because several important things were accomplished. It just didn't get beyond maybe focusing on the central business district.
Right.
And the things that we all uncovered was more of the institutional things that are so hard to change in village culture. Those never happened.
Yeah.
And they're still in place today.
So that was one of my comments too, is I think we need to be more critical of ourselves. Because I think the committee's recognized some things that they've just flat out failed.
Right.
And I think we need to say, hey, this has failed. Like it has
Right.
not worked in 30 years.
And it's failing even till
And it's
today.
right, and it's
Yeah.
continuing right now.
Yeah.
And I think this
Yeah.
needs to be the sort of foundation to kind of rebuild.
It's on page 43, where we talk about add specialized staff.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
Right.
I think that's where we might want to be a little more explicit.
Well, I have a comment. To build off of that, maybe there are two areas to think through a little more. One is on a policy side. Is there a way to codify this? Endeavoring down.
You froze for just one.
I don't know.
If you repeat that, you froze for a second.
And what's that?
If you repeat that, you froze for a moment.
Sorry. Is there a way to to help force, or not force, but leverage the master plan so we don't repeat the past.
Yeah.
Is there a way to codify the use of this plan and any further policy or rulemaking? Like thou shall reference or use the master plan going forward.
So that was one of my comments too, is
Does it have?
whether we
teeth?
needed like an executive summary. I started with the thought of an executive summary, but then I kind of moved to more of like a user's guide. Like the first section should be, this is how you use this plan. You know, this is how it should be read. These are the people that should read it. It should be revisited every year. And then 10 years from now, it should be thrown in the trash and there should be a new committee that writes a new one.
Yeah, I like that.
That's sort of in there.
It is in
But
there.
it's not explicit.
Yes, I did remember seeing
And I
that.
still want to go back to having specialized staff, because
That's the other piece too. Yeah.
International into IT, but it's also management.
Yeah.
You know, we had talked about city manager type thing, and that once you bring in experts to actually run what experts know how to run, then the people who are elected to political positions have an easier time.
Well, John, can I take a step back on that same thought? Perhaps it starts with a budget or allocating funds. That way you can think through staff and policy, but if you don't have money and you're trying to pinch pennies elsewhere, additional priorities that are outlined in the plan won't even be thought of. However, if there's something that's already secured and by means of funding, then we can start thinking about staffing and implementing some of the stuff. So I would advocate that it would start with budgetary, in a budgetary manner.
It can be a chicken and the egg too, man, because you can have the same amount of money in the budget, but it's rearranged.
I like what he's saying though, because if, like you mentioned, Matt, if you don't have the money to support the person you're gonna hire, you get it one year and then you don't have it next year, that's really not doing the village any
Yeah,
justice.
We're talking about, you have a certain pool of funds anyways, and just looking at how those funds can be rearranged to get positions that you really need. And then other positions you may not have to fill.
I think that's addressed to some degree in the plan already as well, right? When we're talking about separate specific capital funds.
Yeah, it's referenced several times, and that's the way to start is if you can like put another line item on the balance sheet. It's not only a visual aid, it's funds allocated that need to be, something needs to be done with them. And then you're like, well, what do I do with them? Hey, I've got a master plan. Let me just see what we can do with them. So it starts with the allocation, I think. I don't know how that happens, but excuse me.
He looks so.
What do you think?
I'm so glad he's not
Matt,
here.
you're breaking my heart there.
Yeah, this is just ridiculous cold. It's just one of those things that just hangs on. Anyway, yeah.
What, if I, I think one thing too, just in terms of how master plans are done here, this conversation starts to morph into like kind of a city management, village management kind of.
The how. Yeah.
It's really, you're kind of going beyond what most master plans do, because it's really kind of a budgetary administrative type of thing.
But I think we're trying to assuage some risk here of this falling into the dustbin. And I think that's where the conversation is really going of like, yep, this is the what, and we don't want to get into the implementation, but we want to ensure that there's some type of process or how does this get implemented? I think that's just the general concern. And John, you're right. Like we're getting into the execution of it, but it's.
So
I think I'm hearing is like, what do we do?
Well, one thing we did suggest, and I think it's for the village could have potentially more support in a planning function in the village. There could be, like called planning, forget it's a planning community development. That would be maybe initially funded simply to help secure grants for the village. And then as time goes on, that the capacity within the village could grow. You could have staff that would be a planning staff in the village, would help, one of their big jobs would be to help advance the plan. And village manager too would be good. I think of other villages that, like John, you know, the village of Potsdam, New York, they have a village manager and they have community development department. And community development department, a lot of their budget comes from grant sources where they can charge their salaries against program delivery and program administration for grants. And then they have consultants that help them write grants, do the technical work, et cetera. So there's that aspect. There's that aspect of it. So I think that could be explored by the village, with the village leadership and the administration. Just different ways to structure the village, you know, to deliver services like that. And the other thought is, on the opposite end, is you know, talk about the trails and some of these things. It's often the government is the last player in the game. You know, usually it's an advocate, it's the voice of someone, and sometimes the government comes in almost kicking and screaming, you know, but dragged into the game, right? You look at the trail system that Saratoga Springs has been building. I remember going to a public in front of the city council, myself and Barbara Glazer. We had a grant to do the Spring Run Trail, which is the one down near the hamlet and all that. Cynthia did the master plan for the trail. We went for the council. We couldn't get a motion even to accept the grants to do this the feasibility study. And we sat there and not one council or mayor even motion, which Barbara and I stood there frozen in time. And so we did, you know, we donated our time to the project and did that part of the master plan. And interestingly though, because they had done that, they got a grant 10 years later, 15 years later to hire an engineer to design the trail. And then they had that design done, and then the ERA recovery money came in. They had millions of dollars. They, what project do you have? I had that project. So that got built. But that was all, the spark plug and the push and everything was all advocates. The city didn't do anything, honestly, on that thing right away for a long time. But they were all there for the ribbon cutting.
Yeah.
And we weren't, by the way, but we were proud and happy that we, you know, so there is a lot of that, you know, I think there's a lot of that that you'll see, but then eventually though, when the administration and government with what level comes in behind, that work pays off, that work by that groundwork at the grassroots, you know.
I think that's how
But
it's
when we're talking about trying to prevent inaction again.
Yeah.
I think it's in this particular area, 29.
Sure.
where we just discussed something.
Yep.
That's
No, I wasn't speaking.
So I was just saying, Smith started that way too.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. So I know some of the folks who were involved in that.
Yeah. Well, the county was gonna give away, give it story, and my understanding is the county was selling part of the corridor. It's tax sale, not for tax sale of the rail corridor. And Zimri Smith said, "How are you doing that?" And he said, "I'll buy it. Let's make a trail out of it."
Wow.
And so the county attorney, they stopped the sale, and, you know, and the county saying, well, the county did not. The county wasn't a big supporter of the trail system at the time. Yeah. Same silence standing in front of the supervisors. But they've come a long way.
It
you
sounds
know?
like it's unusual.
I just volunteered myself.
Just think of the fun.
Originally, when they were supposed to put like a truck route through there or something
That was-
to avoid going through the village.
Yeah, I don't remember that. Yeah, that might have been part of it too. I know there was the truck bypass thing.
Yeah. I don't know if it was through there or where exactly it was, but I knew it was something along that way.
Right, yeah.
I think they rerouted it down Division Street right in front of my house.
I think the bypass was the west.
But now it's.
Was it to the west?
I think so.
I thought it was to the east.
Everything was the King Circle.
I was thinking from 67.
No, it's
I
great
don't
now
really
the
know.
county really has owned the idea of the trail, right? And,
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and,
Well, especially because now you have the Empire Trail is all,
and to hear Milton talk about the sidewalks and customer friendly, because when we were, it was, I think it was, year 1900. We did the town's comprehensive plan, and we created that zoning district with the town center, where the apartments are in the
Right.
airport. And they hired us, and the town said, well, we think our zoning's fine, we just want to put up an industrial district. And I did Toy Story, so they said, well, your zoning is cooking, come right up with the park and copy, Clifton Park zoning verbatim. And the only reason you haven't become Clifton Park is because you're just too far from the north. Yeah, like, what, really, I go, so look, because we worked, and so we try to create those districts and that, and then Wilbur Cheever, who was the supervisor at the time, said, over my dead body, there'll be a sidewalk, literally, in town of Milton. And so he softened up a little bit. We didn't have to kill him. And I brought a picture of the public hearing of a woman with a stroller and a kid holding in her arm, walking right in front of town hall, like right on the line of the highway. I said, and he said, But then they had to vote to put the sidewalks in. They had to vote to take over the county roads. And that was a watershed moment.
Oh,
And because the county said, we don't want anything to do with that sidewalk. We're not a sidewalk. And so the town voted to take over the roads, which was huge. They actually did step up, and take, because that's the only way they could do the sidewalks in the town. Now,
That was a little bit.
yeah, Lou Bennett, yes, Lou Bennett was supervisor, right? So I think the moral is, it takes time for these things to always gel and.
unless there's a groundswell,
Right.
in other words, so it's the way to hopefully keep this, again, cockeyed optimist. From collecting dust is to create a groundswell. I mean, yes, we got all this information, we got all these people, they came, they gave us their surveys and stuff like that, we can't just let them lie there, okay, thanks, oh, you're done. No, that now we have to keep that interest, you have to keep that, okay, here's this comprehensive plan we came up with your help, with your input, let's help get this going, we need you to constantly put feet to the fire, that it's not.
Well, that's in there because on all the long-term, short-term, ongoing goals, most of them have a little thing that says, oh, there should be a committee to study this.
Yeah. Yeah,
And that's what that's
but
about.
and again, we're one little group, the more people, because the more people you get involved in it, that evolves into the more people are involved in government then, and the more people involved in,
Yeah.
I'll be an optimist, I don't care.
There was a comment about, there's a lot of committees, and that was my thought, yes, maybe you could have 2 committees that do all of this, but then that's that same issue that you guys brought up a lot, that you're not getting more people, it's the same people over and over doing in every committee, or, volunteering for this. And those committees are a way that you could try to do that.
Right.
Does anybody have anything that we haven't discussed that we thought should be discussed of a major nature?
Yeah, I have a few notes. Where do I send revisions or suggestions or edits?
Mhm.
Well, I would say if you could send them to Karen, as the chairperson, but copy us, okay, copy Amy and John. Whoever else you wanna share to.
I think I just have one, like there's several minor nits and then just one of the short-term housing ones. But outside of that, it looks great.
There's one question I still had from our last meeting, in the community goals and implementation framework, the built environment and land use, when we talked last time about non-conforming property.
Yeah,
I
right.
thought we kind of didn't come to a good decision on what that language should be like. So I'm was just curious what others' thoughts were on this passage about providing proof of continuous active existence for, say, 20 years. And how is that enough for our plan? Do we want to be more specific?
Yeah, I had that same comment.
I don't think we developed consensus
We
about
didn't,
that.
no, I know, and that's,
No.
yeah. And I don't necessarily want to reopen a contentious
Yeah,
conversation. but-
exactly.
It's a question that's real,
Right,
and there ought to be one of them, it's not for us to decide. I think that's for anybody who's gonna go into the zoning law.
so do we want to have any other guidance then, or just say there should be something about non-conforming property being brought into conformity in new zoning?
Yeah, so illegal, people aren't illegal.
Right,
So what's the consultant's advice? I mean, really, I think that's an important
Right.
question.
So, well, we did modify the language to try to make it a little clearer and a little more, I guess, value. We try to put a principle in there of there was kind of, I forget what we exactly the words, but kind of like credit both cause no harm, that it would, the
yeah,
use would be cause no harm. That's key, because I remember the mayor brought up the last thing, we are great, but just because they were there doesn't mean they're okay.
Right.
If the auto repair shop is not, maybe it's great, maybe it's, whatever it is, so, those kind of, that idea, and I think what John said, it needs to go with it. Fine grained discussions, legal questions about how to do it, what to do, but.
so really that,
What your goal, maybe tell me what your goal is, and, I think it's.
I think, John, what you're saying there about that no harm, the no adverse effect piece is pretty crucial from the conversation we'd had previously.
Maybe doesn't read like that too, but I think that was.
Well, I think my eyes zeroed in on the proof of continuous active existence for 20 years, and I kind of glazed over the following clause of documentation of no adverse effect, because we spent so much time on how much time should this be? What is the time frame that we're
Right.
considering? So I'm just, maybe we don't need a time frame there if we're
Right.
talking about it as,
You could just say
Yeah,
years.
I don't think 20 years is even significant. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, it isn't.
no.
You could, in other words, just say years. Read it again without the 20.
provide proof of continuous active existence for years and documentation of no adverse effect on neighboring properties.
So if you bring documentation, say for 5 years, that's sufficient.
That's for someone else to decide.
Guys, I'm fading. I'm gonna hop off.
I'll go.
Yeah. Go for it.
Feel better.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Bye.
I have a similar question, and I don't know if it's related, because I did see something in the document that said allowed uses in the CBD are not as important as the form and relationship of the building. The village should consider the adoption of form-based code. So if you could explain that to me, because that was a conundrum for me to understand.
It's that microanalysis with words, I can explain it to you. I think
Okay.
maybe we can. I'm such a better writer than him.
We are being recorded, Jim.
But he draws beautiful pictures. He's better at everything else, actually. So the idea is, in a downtown, you'll have users come in and out of a property. Licensed massage therapist, it might be a tea shop, it might be, a lot of different things. But the form and shape of that structure and parking, et cetera, is really what guides it. So I think especially not important, is not as important.
Well, is that similar to the
Yeah.
issue that Jared brought up relative to quote unquote non-conforming? If the building from the outside hasn't changed, but it goes from, a daycare center on the inside to a professional accountant's office on the inside, and nothing happens on the exterior of the building, even though it might be an R1, is it the same sort of situation?
Right.
Is it, or,
Typically not. No.
okay,
Not in a residential district, it's really, that's where you can have a lot of uses that are nuisance or they're not compatible. Maybe the use is fine, but the hours of operation are
Right.
The number of people coming into the business
Yeah.
changes.
But I think maybe it's not clear, the two a little bit different. I think the point that we're trying to make within the downtown is there you want buildings to fit the character, that becomes really more important. It becomes really important so that you have, it fits the village character and that it'll be.
Yeah, I don't think he's saying, right, you'd still have your same list of uses that they would have to conform to. He's not saying, any use, but he's saying the use is not as important as the way that the building fits in with the character around it.
Yeah, my loose understanding of form-based code is build the building you want to fit the look that you want. And the use kind of follows. So the priority is the building, and then the use kind of follows after that. So if you build a 3-story brick building downtown, you're not going to get an industrial manufacturer to move in because the form doesn't fit the use anyway.
right, no.
You're going to
They
get
would want that.
the kind of uses that. My trouble with the first issue is, in my head anyway, this seems like some magic bullet that just like fixes everything. And it seems way more nuanced than that. And I can't get over that hurdle.
Yeah.
It's like, everybody's good as long as your neighbors don't complain.
Yeah.
But I have a hard time stepping over that. And then there are some other issues there with, the Episcopal Church is R1 right now. They want a new sign. So they're held to R1 standards for a sign, which is about the size of my piece of paper. So if we say, okay, your use is fine, well, what standard do we hold them to for a sign?
Well, the historic district.
Okay, the house next door is not in the historic district. They were at the planning board last week.
Which house next door?
Canty's house. It's
Oh.
carved out,
Yeah.
even though
But
it's on the
that's on the
historic
National
register.
Register.
So they want a new sign. They're in the R1 district.
Yeah.
You say their use is okay because the house predate, that's one of the oldest houses in the village.
R1 district, on that side, on the west side of the street.
Right.
My sign complies. 2 square feet.
Right.
It's been there for 45 years. It still works. People
Yeah.
complain.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're also not on a busy
Yeah.
street,
Yeah.
a high volume street. So people are,
It's debatable.
well,
Yeah, true. That is the
Right,
cut,
but I
that is
guess
the
there
cut
are
through for
other-
the village.
if you just say, well, your use is fine.
Yeah.
Then what about all the stuff that goes along with it?
Right. Well, the other slippery slope there is that actor's use and management may be fine, but someone else comes in, it does the same thing.
Right.
The bad actor.
Right.
Right.
And now you've got.
Exactly.
I said the auto body shop. Oh,
Right.
great, everything new is perfect, no problem.
Yeah, he's a neighborly guy that keeps things picked up.
Right.
Right.
You know what that is.
I love that they wanna make changes, because we're not going around saying, oops, we're not supposed to be here, it's in R1. Change that to a house, if it's a family or a business, right? Then we've got a dentist on the end of High, it's in the R1. We're not throwing him out, but he
Yeah.
couldn't do a lab in his building.
So it's not a clean
My
slate
mistake, I'm an R2.
at rezone. It's still case by case as
Yeah.
property is developed or sold or
Well, he was
renovated.
prohibited from putting a laboratory in his building because he's a non-conforming use, so that's where the problems exist.
Yeah.
When somebody wants to make a change in that building, they can't.
Right.
Suppose somebody isn't conforming to the zoning requirements though, and the neighbor is not happy with what's been done, and never just hasn't said anything, are we just gonna,
Right.
let's
Hey,
just gonna say, okay?
We're a village of friends, and you know,
Yeah. and-
Well,
it depends on how friendly you are.
Yeah, I think John's language takes care of that.
And I think if we look closer, you know, in the village, we will find that so many individual parcels have so many violations that, do we really want to look that close? I mean,
That's the
people
issue,
know,
right?
yeah.
Right.
What you do if
You
you
know?
wish to pass, if you were suggesting that we want enforcement, we want to make sure that the zoning law is something that's enforceable, and we have it enforced, so people are not going about just creating havoc, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, yes, if we're looking to what we want to do, yeah, you got to, because it will be enforced.
Yeah.
And if it's enforced, then people will be.
Well,
hurt.
Enforcement has never been a hallmark of the village.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
And
too.
rules in the village are for some people and not for everybody
Well, let's put it this way,
necessarily.
Are we going to write?
you know,
are we
and-
su- Are we going to suggest that the zoning law be written so that it need not be enforced?
Well, right now, it's not,
Right.
it's,
No.
it's not being enforced, okay? And, you know, Monique showed us that at the first meeting a year ago, you know, and gave us a classic case. But, you know, I think the conundrum is, it's a small village. We don't have professional staff. You made a recommendation in the report to have professional staff. It's important. But if that never happens, if the budget isn't there to hire someone, if someone is not qualified to do the job, you know, it's never gonna get done. But, you know, it is our dirty little secret. If you have a big house in the village, you know,
Right, just put an
my
extra
husband
door in.
worked from home 30 years ago,
Sure. Oh, yeah.
you know, there used to be an adult daycare center in my home, a lawyer's office, and God knows what else, you know, and so that's just one little story. Multiply that by everybody's
Right.
home, and
Right.
you'll uncover that even when we went
But I
up to
think-
Colonial Hills, you go on Google Maps, there's
Yeah,
all
right.
sorts of businesses up there, and that's our one. And no one's, you know, no one's crying about that, but it's all throughout the village. And it's not that I want to constrain it, but when a business is obviously flaunting their business and causing harm to the next door neighbor and not being a friend and a good neighbor, you know, that's where people are at the end of their rope, and they basically, you know, contact the village for assistance. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, the flip side of that too is,
The desire is to have a flexible zoning law that will accommodate what's been happening naturally. And I think the report deals with that to a degree as well.
Yeah, so.
But you handle it maybe with a more flexible zoning. like the transition stuff, But also some sort of special use permit. In other words, if you're a non-conforming user and you want to change something in that building, you have to get a special use permit to do it. But you can get one instead of, nope, you can't do it.
And as time goes on, banks are going to become more and more finicky.
Yes.
And if a property does not conform to zoning, it will not be able to be sold because the bank will not finance it. And the zoning law can create real hardship. because of it.
Well, just, yeah. Well, we just sold our house up in the Adirondacks, and the attorney for the buyer asked for, and he us to swear that we didn't do anything, that there's nothing required a building permit if we did.
That's
Just
right.
was built. And the other thing was, we had to get a certificate of occupancy from the town. And this was a new construction. I'm like, did I ever get that? You know, I can't imagine asking for it now. So I'd be like, what? So then that was, we did get one,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, that is happening.
Yeah.
That is happening.
And
So.
we don't want our law to do
But
that.
I do think you've got to have, it's about a balance. You do have to have a code that's enforceable. And you do, and if folks are extending like the idea of the laboratory of some, you know, that dentist or some physician type, sometimes that does lead to them deciding business-wise to get a commercial space, you know, and that's not a bad thing, you
Right.
know, to do that, you know, so part of it is that, or for someone to come into, there may be code issues, come into compliance with building code that's been, you know, conveniently ignored, you know, health and safety issues, fire escapes, you know, fire code rated, you know, walls and things in these big old houses. So I do think that has to be not a common tool, really, for you know, this should be something that is define the perfect case, and that's how do you apply and define all these other things. You're on your own. I wouldn't permit it, to tell you the truth. I wouldn't start legalizing a lot of, because I quite frankly, it was a question, you know, what's sort of arbitrary and capricious of the village enforcing anything. You know, someone say, you know, they're but the easiest thing to beat up the village on any enforcement.
I think Anna Stanko calculated 60% of the village is not conforming. So that's a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some of it gets worked out with some new zoning districts, right? Just reworking the mapping, like we've talked about, takes care of some issues. I think there are some areas where non-conforming uses should go away, right?
Yeah, right, absolutely.
And I'm not sure that this lets that happen.
Yeah. Right.
And I mean, the flip side to Marilyn's point too about the unruly neighbor is the great neighbor who can't afford the big house anymore, but he's a wonderful neighbor and he wants to split it in half and rent the other half out so we can stay there. And he would be a great neighbor, remain a great neighbor, and the neighbor probably wouldn't even know the difference.
Right.
Right, and they don't,
And they can't.
and it's
And
done every single day.
Right, they
You know?
can't legally do it now.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not gonna do it, because it's
Yeah.
not.
Well,
getting-
right.
It's not getting enforced. You make a
Right.
point you made before.
Yeah.
So until you have enforcement in place,
Our enforcement is based on complaints, that's it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
but if you don't have enforcement, what,
That's where the law
Might
can allow,
change it.
special
Exactly.
permits. And like you say, the different zones within the residential areas. We were talking about more flexibility in these types of places. than
Right.
others. And that will help ameliorate the situation, because you're worried about the people who, you know, they buy a house, it's a two-family house, it's been a two-family house for 20 years, 30 years. And all of a sudden they try to sell it and they find out they can't sell it as a two-family house.
Right.
You know, those are the problems that we have.
Like the beehive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a hardship to begin with. It shouldn't be a problem.
What do you mean?
It's a hardship. The building itself is a hardship. You cannot, that building is not a single family, period. Because you've got to have a hardship on the property. It was not self-created because it exists before zoning. It's an automatic hardship for use, period. No problem.
Well, not to get personal on this, but how in a village could a house that sustained a devastating fire sit there for 5 years or more and not have someone from the village basically say, you've got to do something, you know? And meanwhile, it just sits there and deteriorates. I never understood that.
it happens in a lot of different buildings too, not just from fires.
Yeah. Well, obviously Monique's, you know, example, we got that early
Well,
on,
look at
but
Ricketts.
that's a
Example.
pattern, that's a pattern in this village.
Yeah.
And I don't know the history of the neighbors, whether they ever complained, but the fact that it was never condemned, nobody forced the owners to do something about it, you know, it's a bigger reflection of the culture in the village.
Well, this will probably end our meeting, but, Front Street did not used to be straight
Yeah.
going down to Brookside. It had to take a turn
Mhm.
because there was the McMaster house that was built before Front Street was laid out. The McMaster house burned. It took the village over 10 years to remove the remains so it could straighten Front Street in the 1840s and 50s. So yeah, it's a habit.
That's understood.
It's a tradition.
This is right.
Yeah.
You don't want to change.
We just continue along the
Right,
line.
right.
Can I mention that we are applying for a grant for zoning, which would, if we get it, will provide additional funds to zoning, and that would start in end of March, April, so, you know, that's, some, our goal is not to let this thing, oh, nice comprehensive plan, put it on the shelf, we want to go right into zoning and implement what you read.
Suppose we don't get the grant.
We do have 30,000 in the budget, and we could get started, and then that'll be
Right.
allocating in next year's budget to keep us going. But, it's, CDTC, and we've got a pretty good reputation, with them. So we'll see.
So John, right now we have this draft,
Yes,
and you'll probably get comments from everybody to and do a final one.
yes.
And then what's the next step?
So, so first of all, we need to get a date on comments from you or you.
Okay.
So we can self-impose that. Then the next step is we'll consider those comments and maybe change to the draft. It's called the final draft.
Okay.
I don't need, know if we need to meet, we'll email it around.
Okay.
And then, then you'll, as chairperson, privilege say, you know, I need comments back by whatever date you pick. And then with that, if there's anything that we need, we'll adjust. I think that would be you, as the chairperson, say, okay, this is good, I gotta get back to committee, let you decide, but deal with it.
Oh, good.
I do think though, the committee should either meet or by email, you know, basically have a resolution of some sort, say we're setting this up to the village for for consideration for adoption.
Okay.
You know, so that'd be your task, and then it goes to the village for a public hearing. We could have an informal public meeting if you want on it. It's not a hearing. You know, I forget what we call for in our contract. Amy, we'll have to check that, but Amy, you know what our schedule scope calls for off the top of your head? You're muted.
I don't know that it was that spelled out in the contract. I think it was just like, and the seeker process, you know?
Right, and the
Right.
seekers after that?
So, well, no, when the next draft include, you know, a seeker document with it.
Okay.
So we'll have that, the final draft will integrate seeker. So it'll be in the form of a generic EIS,
Okay.
which will just be a policy level discussion of what the plan says. You know, we'll look ahead to that part of it. So that'll go to the village board.
Okay.
And then the village board would go to circulate that, this whole process to public hearing.
Right, so I'm just trying to get a timeline
Right.
on when they can consider going into the zoning aspects. How quickly can we get this adopted or potentially adopted? Because then it's not, we're not holding things up, then it's the board.
So for this, the committee, I think all we need from you all is comments. Then we'll send a final draft out. You guys can, you don't have to meet. If you want to meet, you can decide, send around, say you want to meet or not, and then you can, just by email, I would think, just say we're on board to send this up to the village board, and then we'll get it to the village board, and then from there, they'll go through their process of circulating it to all the folks who need to get it, the county planning
For
board.
seeker.
Yeah, for seeker adoption, set a public hearing date, if the board decides to, they want to adopt it, you know, and all that. So,
Okay,
we can lay that schedule out for the, yeah,
I might
That's one
say
thing
the
you
board
guys do.
would probably want presentation.
Sure.
Similar to what you did there, you know.
Yeah.
And to present.
right, okay.
Its main theme, because, you know, we'll publicize that and the public can come to that to see. So
Okay.
the introduction of the comprehensive plan, and then we, you know, hopefully approve it and send it through. The people who need to send it through and public hearing, of course, and adopt it. Then we can get started with zoning.
okay, so it's the 17th. Week from today is Thanksgiving. Do you want to say the Monday after Thanksgiving for comments?
That's fine. I got one thing I want to mention,
Oh,
is
yeah.
it changes the kind of wording of part of this.
The 28th. Is that the date you're? The 28th of November?
Yes.
Final comments by the 28th.
Yeah, does that work for everybody?
One thing I wanted to bring up on page 12. About halfway in the paragraph, it says recognizing the increasing importance of information technology on management and maintenance of village systems and operations. The village should consider a plan which centers around a position responsible for operating, updating, and securing all uses of IT by the village and or ongoing training of village employees. Any way we can add to that sentence to modern day best practices and standards, because IT stuff changes 6 months a year. So what we have written now, if we don't address it within a year, we address it, say 2 or 3 years down the road, the IT infrastructure is already outdated. So just something to think about, because you can put something that's 3 or 4 years in and think that it would be best suited, but a year down the line, suddenly it doesn't meet the standards what the village needs.
Right. And I don't know whether it's a staff person or a private firm that does it, you know?
I think it's a,
And we shared with some of the municipalities.
Well, you know, I don't know. Our company, we're small, IT is, we have a firm that does it for us. Because we say it's changing all the time.
Right.
Yeah, you know. We have to read through as individuals, doing our whole IT support, right? Right,
Oh, yeah.
Right, but then, yeah, no, that's a good point, though. They need to be up to speed, you know.
because I don't think there's anything currently that puts that in place where it's best practice and best standards. They leave it up to the IT company that's doing it to either quote something out or whatever their process is. I'm not sure, because I haven't been through with the village. I know with like the police station has certain standards they have to meet in order to put the state system in their station. So just a thought or an idea, because yeah, you could put something in there that it's gonna
And
help.
there may be funding for that under, the anti-terrorism acts and other type of funding that may be, could help carry that load, IT upgrade and support for the whole village. If you have to do, public safety things,
Yeah, because when I revamped the firehouse, the unit
Okay.
firehouse, I had no standards or anything to follow. I did what I knew from work, because I work with this stuff all the time.
Okay,
And at that time, it lasted 6, 7 years. And then they're currently going through whatever they're going through now to revamp it. Because I made sure it lasted that amount of time. That wasn't for something that was already 3 or 4 years in there, have it last 2 years, and then somebody had to replace it because it didn't make sense.
So if I have comments by the 28th, and get them to you, how quickly can we have the next draft distributed?
did you hear that question, Amy?
No, okay.
If I have comments by the 28th and immediately get them to you,
Mhm.
how quickly can you have the final draft distributed to us?
Depending on the comments.
It depends on the comments. If they're pretty minor, maybe a week, but
Yeah. I think unless somebody's not saying something tonight, it sounds like they're gonna be pretty minor.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing, we want to do more of a formal layout design, so that'll take us a couple days extra there, but
Agree or something that just needs agree once, not agree twice.
Yeah, there's some
You see-
typos in
you see
there.
it?
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Just that's.
You'll probably get a ton of typos that are all the same.
Right.
right,
yeah, and as she said, she's gonna tweak the visual presentation.
The
right?
aesthetic
Right.
part, yeah.
Yeah.
that'll take a couple extra days, and then I
to the
think
photos.
I'd say like 10 days, probably.
Okay.
John, do you think that's
Well,
reasonable?
That's fair.
Let's see what else we have going on. That's
The
fair.
most project we have, so,
This is the one.
most important project we have, so.
Buttering
All
this
right,
up.
so,
We got family all for you.
I was my father's favorite child.
so it looks to me like we can have this to the village board by Christmas then, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
We don't-
Merry Christmas.
Christmas,
We
right.
usually don't meet, we only have one meeting in
We'll send
December.
all of you, we'll send a copy to each of you.
Right.
No, because actually, yeah, we don't usually do end of December meeting, so, you know.
But still, give him a chance to.
Yeah,
you
you
know,
guys
it'll
can
be
do
great.
it, and then January,
Then probably.
Yeah, that's good, I think that's good timing.
You guys can take the holiday off.
exactly.
I just had a question about the maps, the GIS part. So
Sure.
I went through the document online, but were there attachments that showed additional maps other than the ones that we've seen tonight? For example, in the document, I saw a map that showed the 100-year flood zone area. I saw a map that you showed tonight of the proposed
And
land use rezoning or land use changes. Are there other GIS maps that came out of the contract?
Yeah, they're, let's see.
Natural resource map or some sort of a soil map or a map of stormwater issues or something else? Or am I missing them?
The existing conditions report had more maps.
Right, so there's a lot of maps in that existing conditions report. And I think, but we did put together a map of existing land use and zoning. That we, and we had a map of, aerial image along with the overlay.
Yeah, so that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, we can
Did I
get-
miss that?
No, those weren't put in there, but they. can be.
Okay, all right.
They can
No,
be.
they can,
Yeah, that was one of my questions,
you know,
was
talk
sort of
about
the
the
remainder
plan.
of all the other stuff that we produced and how it's, I mean, how it's sort of memorialized or
Exactly.
is it? I mean,
Yeah.
even the Zoom, I mean, is kind of unique because all of our meetings were essentially recorded.
Mhm.
Should they be saved?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you keep them in your drive, we can link, because, you know, once the PDF is online, it should still be link, you know, click on the links inside of it. So if
Yeah.
that took you to the repository of videos, if that's in your, you know, town drive somewhere, or village, then,
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
I was thinking of that one also.
Doesn't Zoom record these and hold them? Doesn't Zoom record these and hold these?
for a certain amount of time, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah,
But John, you've been sharing them with the village too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're on the village website.
Those videos are
Supposed-
only required to be accessible for 4 months, and I actually put forth a motion, which, you know, we didn't do because we didn't have how much it costs, but I said if we've got videos, we should save them as part of the record.
Mhm.
You know, whoever, you know, the village board, and somebody said, well, just the village board, and I said, well, a comprehensive plan committee has, you know, done videos, and I want to save them.
So does someone at the end of 4 months take them off and get rid of them?
Currently not, we go back more than four months, but,
That's all that's required.
and Zoom, I think, only holds them for, unless you pay them.
Right,
So,
yeah.
Right.
I mean, you can download them, but I'd say, yeah.
They're downloaded on
But,
the,
you know, there's,
So then you've got-
there's, yeah, those could certainly be saved though, even temporarily to Google Drive. you know, and then the village could put them, you know, sure you can get storage for those. But the other, they're kept separately, but we could make appendices to this plan if you want. We could have the background study attached, that little PDF from CDRPC. We could have the bike and pedestrian plan attached if you want, as an appendix, just for convenience.
I was wondering that too, if we take the opportunity to sort of consolidate everything into one.
No, right, this is one document, one
Yeah.
link, and they're all there, so as long as we could do that, and include the economic study that was done by
The development,
Saratoga, you know,
Prosperity.
Prosperity, yeah. We
The
can
only
have-
problem with that I can see is that it would be a really large document. Like just file size
Well,
wise.
and the SCPP thing is on the village website
Oh,
too. It's, or I think it is, right? The SCPP.
Yeah, I think wherever you put it on the website, just make sure the other plans are like right next to it, you know? Put them all together.
Yeah,
It's already
yeah.
there.
Talk to.
We could, yeah, we'll look at both, putting just links to them, and Amy, we'll look and see if we can crunch.
I think
that
we
up.
can definitely link to them, you know, we can definitely have a page on the appendix saying, here's the other plans we reference.
Mhm.
You know, link to them.
Rather than getting something that's so unwieldy after
Sure.
a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen
And
that.
Fred, one of the other questions I had is, you kept saying that the minutes are in the appendix. The minutes, you have the summation of the meetings.
So, yeah.
The minutes, of course, you could.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, I should write meeting summaries, not minutes.
You should microfiche those, John.
I only used that once.
Those are hours, not minutes.
I haven't used one of those
Anybody else
machines
have
since I
any
was a kid.
questions? All right, we went way over, but this is good.
We needed to do that.
Really
Yeah.
good, yeah. Does anybody think we need to meet again in person, or do you think these comments
If you think we should meet again, let us know.
okay.
I think
Well, yeah,
Special pig.
we give you all the comments and
Pizza
stuff. we
and
can
beer.
present
sit down
at a
and-
public hearing when the time comes,
Yes,
all of us.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Karen speckled pig, pizza and beer. Okay,
We could do that, that would be kind of.
We
fun.
started out at-
Tables there, you know?
started
I'd
out
like
at,
all of you, except for John, because he can't, to consider when we do rezoning, to sign up, because I would love as many of you as could do it, to be involved in, spend a year on all of this. So at least that's my personal desire is, you know, we're developing a form to put on the web where we get people who don't want to serve on committees, you know, put their interest in, so, you know, we get it started in the beginning of the year, and then because you need a committee.
You know, you love going to all these meetings. Well, I'm glad we're not gonna meet again in, because I have to
Well,
go back.
December is so hard.
I have to go back down to my dad's house, so I'm leaving the week after Thanksgiving for another week, and then I'm in California with the baby,
Oh,
so beginning of January.
nice. All right then.
Green stuff.
As always.
I'll find a place with no internet. With my luck, there won't be.
Amy's Kids California, if you need a translator.
Oh,
John,
Yeah,
these are the minutes.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if-
no. Again, though, are they,
I can send them to you electronically.
yeah, can you send them electronically? We
If you
can-
need to play with it or something.
Well, we can make a PDF on it.
Yeah.
We can all together, make one big PDF. All right, awesome.
Goodbye, everybody.
Oh, maybe.
Being patient.